This morning's story is a bit of a strange one. It's almost bizarre. We've got Jesus and the disciples heading somewhere. They're clearly passing a synagogue and they see a man who's been blind from birth. And the disciples ask Jesus, "Who sinned, Rabbi? Was it this man or was it his parents?" And they talk as if they know everything about this man. And I think that's common even in our world today, where we see someone with noticeable disability and we think we know them. And we need to remember that in John, he only focuses on 7 miracles of Jesus. And it's not to tell all that Jesus did, but to show that Jesus is the Christ and for people to love him the way John loves him. So this miracle is about a blind man receiving sight, and why that's important. If we look back to Isaiah's prophecy, in the messianic times, the one who has been sent will be able to turn people with blindness and give them back their sight. And that's what we have here. And it may be an example for Jesus to show his disciples that what the prophets have been saying about me for hundreds of years is true. But the disciples miss a pretty big opportunity to ask a larger theological question. They asked, did he sin? Did his parents sin? There was such an opportunity. Why do innocents suffer? Did God do this to him, or did God not do this to him? Why are some people born at a disadvantage? But they ask the superficial question, a question that in this time all of Judaism felt that in this situation it was a result of sin. But Jesus tells them neither. It's so that the manifestation of God can work through this person. And it's the Sabbath, and Jesus spits on the ground, takes some dust, kind of uses some clay and dirt, makes this paste, puts it on the man's eyes, tells him to go to the pool and wash, and his sight is restored. We have Pharisees watching all this happen. One, Jesus did the healing on the Sabbath. Additionally, the use of the clay and all that he was using was another offense to their tradition at the time. And the way they see what Jesus did is, if Jesus disobeyed the Sabbath and violated tradition, he therefore disobeyed God. And the Pharisees are also very upset that the sight has been restored, because the way they believed it was the result of sin for a person to be born this way, and all the world needs to know what the cost of sin is, and that this person should have remained in the state that he was in forever as a lesson to others. And maybe our first lesson that we can take from the disciples is maybe we should take opportunities to ask questions differently, because Jesus does address their one question to this one specific case. But if they'd given it some more thought, there's probably some answers that we could have gotten that we continue to ask ourselves today. And we mentioned that the Pharisees are upset at this experience, and they get involved very quickly, because while Jesus has liberated this man, they had wished that he had stayed the way he was, and they take little joy in that what has plagued this man since birth is gone. They felt that blind, like the cripples, like those who couldn't speak were God's way of reminding people what the cost of sin is. And that all of the things that Jesus did, who he did it to, on the day, what he used, they were upset with all of it. And this made the Pharisees very uncomfortable because they do not believe that God acts this way. Their God, the one true God, doesn't do this kind of liberating. Plus, it was the Sabbath. It was set aside for goodness and for remembering God. There's little concern for the man. No thought of his life and the gift that he just received. All they see is healing that didn't fit their rules. They saw no place for the action. And they felt that if anybody would know how this should happen, or what should happen, or what God does and doesn't do, it's them. They know who God blesses and they know who God punishes because their healing didn't fit their plans. They want to believe this didn't happen. Have you ever been amongst a group of know-it-alls and tried to explain something to them? Well, that's what we have here this morning with the Pharisees. So what do? They go to intimidate the former blind man's parents, ask him if he was really blind from birth. Was this a trick? And the parents reply, well, he's of age. Go ask him. It's like, thanks a lot, Mom and Dad, right? Like, the Pharisees just hounded me. Now they came to see you, and you send them right back to me. So they go see the man. They try bullying him to admit that it was all fake. And when the man lectures them, they begin to attack his character. They will respond with, who are you to give us lessons? Born and bred in sin as you are. And in today's talk, they're basically saying, listen, boy, don't tell us what God's about. We are the professionals. We're nobody's fool. And they knew how to deal with false preachers. They knew how to deal with false teachings, charlatans, fake messiahs. The Pharisees were good with that, and they did try to protect the people from things that would harm them or remove them from the principles of Judaism. But when something didn't fit what they believed to be the way or rule or tradition they created, then something was wrong. And when they're talking to this guy and he's holding his ground pretty well, the human nature in them kicks in. When reason fails and they lose their patience with him, they go to guilt. So you're liberated now. Well, we know what you used to be. We know where your parents live, and we'll never let you forget who you are. And in all the rules of the Pharisees, grace is lost. Isn't that one of the beauties that Jesus brought to us? Grace, mercy, and salvation. But they showed no grace to this man who had been healed. And in their stubbornness and short-sightedness, they can't receive any grace either. And they lose out on this grace for themselves because the rules are the most important thing. And when I got to thinking about rules, I think of an Andy Griffith episode where Opie had caught Andy maybe on the edge of what the rule was. And the lesson that Andy gave Opie was, you're at a lake. There's a sign that says, no swimming. The little boy is drowning. What do? Opie says, well, you save the child. So it's like that in this story, that what they have known in the past, God couldn't possibly do something new. And when God does something new, they're not there to support the man. They're not there to learn. They're there to shut it down. And even though they have the charge of protecting the people against all kinds of perverted religion, when genuine liberation occurred right in front of them, they preferred the old ways over a potential new form of grace. In their eyes, the Sabbath was an unbreakable rule. To break the Sabbath was to disobey God. And that's what Jesus has done. And while we see them so rigid around their rules, it's something that all organized religion can have happen. Just in our Protestant religions here in this country, religion was able to justify slavery. Religion was able to make a rule that women called by God could not have a form of ministry in the church. So while this seems so unlikely to happen, it's a human nature element that we're also dealing with these Pharisees. And it's something that impacts us all. How do we make the rules? Are all rules right? Who causes sin? Who is from God? We cling to security and tradition, but is it right to sometimes throw it to the four winds? Who's a prophet? Who's not? How do we tell the difference? Who will tell us the difference? Can we celebrate liberation and salvation when it comes to people we thought who were beyond redemption in ways we thought God would never act? The Spirit moves as it will, and we never know who is exactly going to be touched by it or where. The best is to be ready for a surprise. Sometimes the only time healing can occur is when it doesn't fit the rules. So let us focus back on the blind man. We learn a lot about him in this brief text. There was no indication when we opened John chapter 9 that this man had asked for healing. Jesus just healed him. And he isn't told to have faith or to believe in Jesus. That happens later. He's told to put the paste on his eyes and go wash it off in the pool. His friends don't recognize him. He tries to tell them it's really me. The Pharisees continue to question him. And the next time they visit, he has some humor. Look, I told you all I know. I find that hilarious. He said, look. And when he doesn't have anything else to tell them, and they come back again, and he makes the sarcastic comment, do you want to be one of his disciples too? That's when they kicked him out of the church. But I think the man knew he was going to be kicked out of church anyway. It's hard to get upset with the blind man. And I think in this story, and sometimes in the world around us, we see the person for the element that they have. He's a blind man. Blind man's to be pitied. It doesn't matter what he has to say. The blind man does have things to say. He, unlike his parents, can stand to the truth and stand up to the Pharisees. And it cost him a whole lot. He got his sight, which he had never had. But his friends don't recognize him. His parents sell him out. He gets kicked out of the church. He has no job. As a blind man, your job's a beggar. So he's lost a whole lot, but he's gained a whole lot too. And I think if we have a lesson in this, keep your eye on heavenly things and not on earthly things. That's what this man is living out. And it's the first time that we see Jesus offer himself as the object of faith. And then in his universal character in relation to humanity, he's the Son of Man. He had before called people to follow him. He had revealed himself. He had taken homage from believers. But now he proposes a test of fellowship, and that he acknowledges that the blind who know that they are blind are enlightened, and the ones who swear they can see are blind. And we do need to think back to Jesus. He opens our story, tells the disciples, no, this is not due to sin. He does the healing, and then Jesus goes on. But when Jesus hears that the blind man has been kicked out of the church, Jesus comes back to find him. And when Jesus finds him, he asks him, do you have faith in the Son of Man? And the man replies, tell me who I should put my faith in. And Jesus does his own play on words. You have seen him, because it is I that is speaking to you. Who is this person? And the man responds, Lord, I believe. Here for the first time, we see that Jesus, being an object of personal faith, what follows next? Confession and deed. And there are those who can now see, and those who are caught up in the way it was, caught up in the rules and tradition. They can progress no further. They have the Son of God there, and they can't see it. They don't even realize that Isaiah said, when someone starts curing the blind, we're in messianic times. They don't see it. And what they do have, they're going to lose. And Jesus ends the story by reminding him and us he really came into the world to give sight to the sightless and make blind those who see. And that's when the Pharisees jump in again. Are you saying we are blind? He says, if you were blind, you would not have any fault. Since you can see, your guilt remains. And the separation between the old and the new, the way of Moses, now the way of Jesus, it's now consummated. When the rejected gospel, or when the new is rejected, we still have a gospel that transforms everything. But some things even the gospel can't change. Some questions still aren't answered, but faith is possible nonetheless. The innocent still suffer, and we wonder why. The people who can't see can. The people who do see don't. Most of us can be more secure with the rules than liberation and faith, because there's something in our nature that says, I need to have all these answers to my questions now. But God doesn't really oblige us with that in this text this morning. Instead, we have a God who comes looking for us, a God who sends us to the pool so that we can see, uses spit and dust and water, but also brings a never-ending love with him. The love of Christ is what transforms this man. It's what transforms us. It's what we can lean on when we don't have all the answers, or we can't explain tragedy or suffering, or why somebody's lot in life is like they never had a chance. And even with that confusion, we know that our Creator is a creator of love, and we can pass on our love to those who are in need. And that's how we can support our community in a Christian way. And that's the good news this morning. Thank you.